Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you guys are in the world. And today we're talking about the World of Warcraft pre-order bonus, but unlike a lot of other content creators, I'm not going to be complaining about it. Instead, we're going to talk about something interesting that some people have noticed from the new pre-order bonuses. Now, with the pre-order, the Epic Edition, which is $79, you get 30 days of game time, you get a 120 boost, you get a special mount, you get access to a special pet, and you get a unique quest for a transmog. And of course, you get Shadowlands. That's kind of important. But the unique transmog is called the Eternal Traveler's Vestments. And this is a pretty cool, I think a very cool looking transmog set, to be honest. And it's of a theme that is sort of familiar, that I kind of want to look at with you guys. So here's the thing. This is how you start the quest, right? You get on your new shiny Serpent of Souls mount thing, and on the back of it, there's this little orb you can click on. When you click on it, it actually makes this guy appear. And this guy's name is Zolartios, which I think is kind of like a Greek name. And he asks you to collect some echoes of mortality, basically fragments of mortal life, probably something along the lines of the immortal soul. And he's basically saying that there's some information that you can learn from this, and it would benefit both of you. So you go and you collect these, and you can collect them by doing things like killing 120 mobs, or you can do dungeons, or you can do raids. The most reliable and quickest way seemingly to get them is to do raids. Like from a heroic Eternal Palace, people are reporting getting like 15 of them. Otherwise, it'll take you a couple hours of farming at like the Bloodgate just south of Nazmir, which is what I did. So I collected them all, went and turned them all in. And he says something a little bit interesting when you turn them in. He says, mortal lives are so fragile, and yet any of them can alter the fabric of reality. And that's not the first time we've heard reference to the fabric of reality. That's actually mentioned in Chronicle as well, but Archmage Khadgar from Legion says, the Sargerite keystone tore through the fabric of reality. Now the homeworld of the Legion looms before us, its armies posed to strike. So they're talking about essentially the same thing. What the Sargerite keystone, that green pretty little crystal that Illidan had that tore through the veil of reality to bridge Azeroth to Argus, what that did, apparently, according to Zolartios, mortals can do that as well in some capacity. But let's talk about the armor set. This is what it looks like. I think it's a pretty cool looking armor set, I gotta say. And someone pointed out here, Fiddle Snarf on, I believe this is Reddit, I think, pointed out that the Scythe of the Unmaker from Argus has the exact same theme as the Eternal Traveler's Vestments. And he's right. It's the exact same color palette. Even when you take it into like Adobe programs like Photoshop and things like that, and contrast the different looks, it's completely identical. And when we stick it right next to Argus, it becomes rather apparent that they are, in fact, the exact same theme. But it goes a little bit further beyond that, because you guys know I've been saying for a while that I believe that Argus is basically the Titan of Death. And I know that a lot of people won't agree with this, but I do think the Titans are like the top level gods of the universe. I think they're basically like the progenitors of all the different realms for the most part. But I think the key is that one of them, Azeroth, birthed all of the others and basically led to the creation of all other things. In short, I believe that Azeroth is basically the light of creation, and I do believe that Argus, shadow and destruction and death, was born from her being. But when we look at the Shadowlands, for instance, and it is a place that I believe Argus did craft, many will, again, not agree with that, but let's take a look at a couple things, right? Argus, his files are literally Death Titan when you look through the files of World of Warcraft. These are all the files that pertain directly to Argus. When we look back at this, and it says that Illyria, when she was connecting with Argus, it says this being was much more powerful than the minion of the Shadow had been. It's referring to a demon. Then she had witnessed flashes of destiny. Now she lived a history that surpassed the existence of the universe. So people say, the Shadowlands apparently predates the Titans. I'm not so sure about that. And there's some evidence that I'm going to show you here in this video that's going to go towards supporting that. Now, the first thing is that when we actually look at this armor set in the game, this is it on my my undead character, it has this interesting snake in the middle of it. Now, this snake forms like this infinity sign, essentially. And I noticed pretty quickly that that looks terribly similar to what you see for the sigil for Ouroboros, which is this main city hub in the Shadowlands, and also what you see on the top of the Dark Portal. So, let's start with Ouroboros. Ouroboros has some pretty clear naming similarities to something that is referred to in mythologies as Ouroboros. But I actually decided to read up a little bit more on Ouroboros, and I kind of want to show you guys what that means. So here on tokenrock.com, we can read a little bit more about Ouroboros. It says, Ouroboros is a Greek word meaning tail devourer, and it is one of the oldest mystical symbols in the world. It can be perceived as enveloping itself, where the past, the tail, appears to disappear, but really moves into an inner domain or reality, vanishing from view, but still existing. The Ouroboros has several meanings interwoven into it. Foremost is the symbolism of the serpent biting, devouring, or eating its own tail. This symbolizes the cyclical nature of the universe, creation out of destruction, life out of death. The Ouroboros eats its own tail to sustain its life, in an eternal cycle of renewal. It is sometimes depicted as a lemniscate-shaped figure 8 as well. So, when we go back and we're looking at this kind of figure 8 serpent, even though it's not eating its own tail, especially with the name Ouroboros, the main city, I think is definitely something that's tied to the idea of Ouroboros, which again, as we just read, is kind of centralized around this idea of an eternal cycle and an eternal renewal. This is something that I've been trying to drive at in my videos for a long time, that there's a natural cycle to the universe. And I think that beings like Azeroth and beings like Argus are incredibly important to the integrity of said cycle. And we're getting more about that. So here's a little bit of art from the city Ouroboros, and you see the same sigil. Now, when you compare that to the armor that we're getting, this pattern specifically right here is actually identical to the one that's on the shoulder pads of the armor. So for the whole armor set to perfectly match with Argus's scythe, and for the armor set itself to perfectly match with the architectural style of Ouroboros, I do not think is a coincidence. Now, how it pertains to the Dark Portal? Well, the Dark Portal is something that's inherently linked to the Burning Legion, and inherently linked to the use of fell magics to traverse the Twisting Nether. Here's the thing. I've asserted in the past that I believe that fell magics are actually sourced from the connection between Argus, Shadow, and Sargeras Flame. I know what the cosmology map says, I know what Chronicle says, but as we had revealed to us relatively recently, those things might not be as true or to be taken at face value as they have been in the past. So what I'm basically saying is, yeah, I think that Fel is something unique to the Burning Legion, and I think it's birthed from the connection of Argus and Sargeras, Flame and Shadow. And that's how you get basically Shadow Flame, the flames of Fel. Not only that, though, someone linked something to me on Twitter today with this image. Now, this is a picture of some of the concept art for Torghast. And when we zoom in close on Torghast, there's a familiar kind of figure right there. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but that looks to be a hooded figure holding some type of potentially blade with its hands close together, pretty much exactly like what you see next to the Dark Portal. That's kind of weird, don't you think? Let's move on a little bit further into this. The Unmaker. This is a quest from Legion. And the idea was that you were supposed to go kill Argus, defeat Argus the Unmaker and Antorus, the Burning Throne, and get Sanguine Argonite. Sanguine obviously pertaining to blood. So Argus, this is the description. Argus is Sargeras' solution for existence, an end to all things. For everyone that might ever live, bring an end to the Unmaker. This is interesting because it specifically hones in on anything that ever might live. So if you want to keep living in things, it's basically this little twisted way of saying, if you want to basically stop death because you're living, bring an end to the Unmaker. Let's move even a little bit further beyond that. From the new basically landing page for Shadowlands, this is what I found. Brave the beyond, the veil between life and death is no more. With a single act of destruction, Sylvanas Windrunner has ripped open the way to the afterlife. Azeroth's staunchest defenders have been dragged into all-consuming darkness. An ancient force of death threatens to break its bonds and unravel reality. Hidden realms of wonder and horror await anyone who would pass to the other side. The Shadowlands is home to an entire realm of the departed. It is a world between worlds whose delicate balance preserves life and death itself. As one of Azeroth's greatest champions, you have been granted the power to cross over in body and soul. Now, you must investigate a conspiracy to unmake the cosmos and help Warcraft Legends journey back, or fulfill their ultimate destiny. That is to say that perhaps them journeying back is not what is meant to happen. As we know, we're going to go into the Maw, and it's a one-way trip. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at the idea that, as I speculated a long time ago, Argus probably crafted or was heavily involved in the management, at least, of the Shadowlands. And Chronicle says that the Shadowlands first arose when mortal life came into the cosmos. Now, if that's true, I think that mortality is something that is most likely linked to the forces of life and death, specifically death, because without mortal beings, without there being things that are mortal, which means that they are capable of dying, what is the purpose of death? Death doesn't exist without, I wouldn't say death doesn't exist, but it doesn't function in the same way that it's meant to without the existence of mortal beings. So I think that these links with Ouroboros and this new set that is specifically identical to Argus himself and Argus's scythe, and the infinite kind of, the infinity symbol made out of a fucking snake. The fact that on Torghast, the Tower of the Damned, we have these hooded figures that look like the same ones next to the Dark Portal. Things of that nature, which I believe are inherently kind of linked to Argus, because I think they kind of have to be, considering the Legion's power was kind of based around their use and abuse, if you will, of Argus. And it's funny because in some of the interviews, like the one that Lost Codex did with Steve Denisser, he actually asked him a question about Argus and whether Argus is going to be relevant, but he kind of makes the mistake of throwing in a tidbit about demons and how they respawn, and Steve completely dodges the portion about Argus. They're not saying anything about Argus. And while I don't think that the jailer necessarily directly is Argus, it is possible as like a reborn kind of true form of Argus, but I do think that in some capacity that the jailer is probably serving Argus in the long run. The Arbiter may also be serving Argus. But when we look at all of this Death Titan of massive power that apparently surpasses the existence of the universe and can be used to literally regenerate the demons, it kind of makes sense that when we look at the theme of the Shadowlands and kind of this rebirth-centric idea that's kind of flowing across this realm that we're about to witness, it kind of makes sense that Argus is kind of the kind of recycler in this cycle. You have the creator, more than likely Azeroth, who is, in my opinion, probably birthing the souls and birthing everything into existence. And then Argus, the reaper and destroyer, who comes and reaps it all and brings it to a realm where it can be judged and perhaps cleansed and reborn and basically recycled. And this whole Ouroboros thing and this whole renewal, I think, is very, very evident. The thing is that this is one of those things I've been driving at in my theories again for a long time in regards to Sargeras, because I believe that Sargeras, and this is actually written in the RPG lore Shadows and Light, recognize that the existence of things like the overflowing void and the old gods and stuff, I truly believe is the Titan Pantheon's fault, but not all the Titans. Again, it comes down to Aenar and Amenthul. Aenar, driven by envy and more than likely some hatred, has basically manipulated the Pantheon into swearing an oath to protecting life. That's actually written in Chronicle, that the Titans swore to protect life. Sargeras just apparently somehow found a way against that, perhaps by swearing fealty to death instead. And she's basically using Amenthul's pride and arrogance to kind of manipulate the whole situation. And I think that Sargeras came to realize that. And I think that he sought out Argus, which he probably was fully aware of the existence of prior to all of this, in order to basically reset the universe. Because it says in the Shadows in Light RPG lore that he recognized the Titans had a falsified ordering of the cosmos. And I think that going around and installing massive machinery on worlds and doing all this bullshit sounds like a rather falsified version of ordering the cosmos to me. It sounds like a very artificial way of doing it, and it just sounds very unnatural. And I think that the presence of death and death's power being assimilated with the rest of the cosmos and able to touch upon mortals and take them when the time comes, I think is very important. And we've heard about this machine of death being broken. I very much believe that Argus has something to do with that. This whole thing with the Burning Legion, as much as people want to say that it was just like, it was its own inclusive storyline and is gone, I just gotta remind you that like almost everything in the entire fucking game is because of the Burning Legion. From Arthas to things like the Legion, and I mean all the Legion invasions, the orcs coming to Azeroth, and basically the foundation and founding of the Horde and the Alliance, the whole thing with Gel'Thuzad and Kael'thas and Illidan, and the whole War of the Ancients, all of this shit, the whole battle between the Titans and on a cosmic scale, is all because of the Burning Legion and Sargeras's quest to basically try to reset everything. And there was this interesting quote also that I believe was mentioned a couple times at BlizzCon, and it was, the end of everything is just the beginning. The end of everything. Remember, Argus begins casting the end of all things. I think that it's basically being made, in my opinion, as obvious as it can without spoiling. And I think that's why they're dodging questions about Argus. It's why when I yelled to Ian up on stage, maybe he did just mishear me, because when he showed the jailer, I said, please tell me it's Argus. And he said, no, Arthas. Arthas is dead. I said, no, Argus. Titan of death, baby. Some of you may have heard that, but this is all harkening back to what I believe. In order to beat the void and to beat the old gods and stop this all consumption of the universe, death has to be used as the force which does it. This cycle and this ever-flowing kind of forward movement of things that is kind of dictated by time in a sense, which I believe is Aman'Thul, has to function properly. And if the gods basically get to the point where they're like, you know what, fuck it, we're going to do it our way, we're going to completely ignore the natural cycle of things, I think that it's going to cause some really terrible calamity and really horrible things to happen. This is what I've been trying to warn you about for a long time. Sargeras may have appeared to be the bad guy, but he was essentially harnessing the powers of death and destruction to try to wipe out living things in order to help reset the cycle. You know, it is possible that he was tipping the scales too far to one side, but at this point, it would seem that Sylvanas has filled in the void, so to speak, where Sargeras kind of left off. And Gul'dan had some quotes where he said things like, in the end, death will inherit this world and she will be waiting. Varimathras said, when your holy places burn, when your thrones run red with betrayal, and the shattered mask hangs above your hearth, only then will you know, and it will be too late. It matters not. You're blind to the true darkness closing in around you. He mentions that she is patient, that one. Again, probably talking about Sylvanas. And a nice little quote from actually a Legion legendary, I think it's the Dark Masters or the Dark Titans lesson or something like that, says, patience, young one, and you can have it all. With enough patience, it can be accomplished. And, perhaps I have the completely wrong outlook on this, but I think that this cycle, this circle being completed, which is something Sargeras talks about, and Sargeras taking this giant sword imbued with what seems to be Argus's energy and stabbing it into our planet, thus causing the production of azurite, a resource that was invaluable and causing as much death as possible for Sylvanas, as she says this will change everything. As Ian mentions it at BlizzCon, perhaps Sylvanas, like you see in this little background that I have, perhaps Sylvanas was trying to cause as much death as possible. I've seen some really, really excellent suggestions in the comments on some of my recent videos where people are saying perhaps by causing so much death, she was basically flooding the kind of canals, if you will, to the Shadowlands. And by sending so many souls through, perhaps she was actually trying to shatter the veil by causing this much death. And as you can kind of see in the cinematic, and I will do a cinematic analysis here soon on the Bolvar fight with Sylvanas, as she shatters the crown of, or the helm of domination apart, you can see the souls flowing out of it, and they kind of all fly up to the sky. And then from this massive shockwave from her shattering it, it seems that those souls blast into the veil above us and basically shatter the whole fucking sky. And that was potentially not necessarily planned or necessarily known by the beings who crafted the helmet, but it would seem that it's possible that the raw power of those souls is actually what shattered the veil. So I think that this all ties together. I think that Sylvanas is, again, I still will say that she's kind of, whether she means to or not, kind of carrying out the will of the Burning Legion. I think that this is probably something along the lines of what Sargeras would want, and I want you guys to know that there are going to be others who try to intervene. There will be gods and there will be demigods and things alike that will try to stop what is happening. They will try to stop the resetting and the fixing of the machine of death, and they will try to stop this cycle. And that is because of gods and goddesses like Aman'Thul and Eonar. This manipulation goes further beyond what most people recognize. I'm just saying, man, if it turns out the same way that what I'm saying here ends up at all being in line with the way that the whole Chronicle thing turned out, or Sylvanas opening this gateway turned out, I can't sit here and pretend that I'm going to be shocked when it happens. So I hope you guys enjoy these types of talks. This whole Argus Eternal Vestment thing, the Eternal Travelers, the Scythe, super cool. This eternal cycle and this rebirth, I think, is essential to the foundations of how the Warcraft universe works. Cycles within cycles, as it's mentioned in the preface of Chronicle. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please drop a like on the videos. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoy my content here on YouTube. If you guys enjoy, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. Half of the people that watch my videos are not subscribed. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing, okay? Hit the subscribe button. You're gonna go and you're gonna click on the notification bell, and you're gonna be notified of every time a video is coming out, okay? If you guys don't know, I have a Twitch, twitch.tv/Pyromancer, where sometimes I stream World of Warcraft content. And I do have a Twitter, twitter.com/PyromancerSarg, where you can follow me. We're close to 10,000 followers. I'd appreciate you guys helping me push a little bit further to that. And I'll end it with letting you guys know I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Pyromancer, where you guys can pledge $1, $5, or if you're insane like some of these people, $100 friggin' a month in order to help support me, my content, my channel, and everything that I do here for you guys. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I appreciate you guys very much. Stay awesome. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.